present on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I present AB 144 on the open carry of unloaded handguns in California. We believe that this is a sensible piece of legislation which closes a loophole in California law, which allows unloaded handguns to be worn in public, and it also wastes precious resources during these tough budgetary times because law enforcement gets called out unnecessarily to investigate these situations when folks are out on the town or with their families in a supermarket and they see the proliferation of guns on the street. Law enforcement's called out to investigate, and sometimes those situations become tense. The Police Chiefs Association and PORAC have asked us to close this loophole and pass this sensible gun legislation, and with that I respectfully ask for an aye vote. We have PORAC and the Brady campaign as well.
Very good. Your first witness in support.
Mr. Chair, members, Pat Moran with Aaron Reed and Associates representing the Peace Officers Research Association of California. It's a common sense bill. Ron Cottingham, president of PORAC, would have been here today, except he's at a board meeting. He's told me he received more phone calls from PORAC members on this bill requesting that PORAC support this bill than any other gun bill that has come before this legislature during his 6 years as president. It's a common sense bill. When these guns are carried, people make phone calls to law enforcement. We have to go out and investigate them and make sure the gun's not loaded. They're very tense situations. Officers don't know if the guns are loaded or not. And it takes up valuable resources, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Very good. Next witness in support.
Amanda Wilcox on behalf of the California chapters of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. We have 22 chapters throughout the state. Many of our members have lost a loved one to gunfire. Since this is a fiscal committee, I will not make the policy arguments for this bill. I'm happy to do that if you want. But of course, this bill was deliberated in the Public Safety Committee and was passed by that committee. You've already heard about the problem with the practice of open carry, diverting scarce law enforcement resources. This is a public safety issue, and we ask for your aye vote.
Nick Wilcox in support on behalf of the legal community against violence. Thank you.
Additional witnesses in support? Very good. The bill's been properly moved and seconded. We will go to opposition now. First witness in opposition.
My name is Elena Helmetola, Responsible Citizens of California. I am responsible for the majority of the open carry groups throughout our state. We do not have the calls from law enforcement. We have a lot of law enforcement support. There was a study that showed that we have 86% law enforcement support. People, if they do make phone calls, are advised that nobody has to come out, that it is a legal practice. Open carry, the public is familiar enough with open carry at this point that it's not really an issue. But open carry remains to be an essential right for the citizens of our state to protect the security of them. During a period of duress, if an individual is under direct threat, like what I was under, I had no way to protect my family under the attempted kidnapping of my daughter. I needed a way to protect myself, didn't even own a firearm. Open carry is the only option that you have in the absence of concealed weapons permits that are being issued. I was denied a concealed weapons permit even though I worked with the FBI in order to reduce those threats against my family and my loved ones. During states of emergency, this is going to be a right that everybody needs. We will not have concealed weapons permits. There was protections under Hurricane Katrina during states of emergency that are going to be undone by this bill. So if we are under an emergency and police are not available, this is our only option to defend ourselves and our loved ones. Sorry. I did some additional information. This is a costly mistake. Our district attorneys in our state are already overburdened with prosecutions. These kinds of prosecutions are extremely difficult to get. What would happen is this, every case, because it's not considered a priority case, would be referred out to a private attorney because we do not have enough public defenders to handle the cases. The private attorneys, public defenders are at a cost of, I think it's around $45 to $80 if I remember right. It's somewhere on here.
If you can conclude, your 2 minutes are up.
Sure. Private attorneys are 2 to 3 times that amount. The cost to our state would be great, both in lawsuits, and we will have successful litigation against this if this thing moves forward. This is a heavier penalty than manslaughter, involuntary battery on a peace officer with serious bodily injury. The penalties are harsh. It's an unnecessary law, and there are no problems associated with open carry.
Thank you for your testimony. Next witness for 2 minutes.
Jim Ricketts, co-founder of Tea Party United. I'll address the fiscal issues. Some of you, it's hard to tell, but some of you may have heard of the Second Amendment, which guarantees every citizen the right to bear arms. By bearing arms, that means carrying them. Now, if you pass this legislation, I can guarantee you, I belong to 3 different firearms rights organizations, and we will bring a lawsuit. It's going to cost the state money to defend those lawsuits, and you will ultimately lose. If you've read the Heller decision from the Supreme Court, also McDonald versus Chicago, you know that you're exceeding your authority here. I urge you strongly to not pass this legislation.
Next witness for a minute.
We are proud, responsible citizens of California, Contra Costa Open Carry, and NorCal Open Carry. We strongly urge you to vote no on this bill. It is, as the previous speaker said, very unconstitutional. The Heller decision, I believe, was in excess of $3 million it cost the city. The McDonald decision was up to $6 million it cost. The state does not need this expense right now. We are definitely in a state of budget crisis. When it comes down to a public safety issue, I have been open carrying for over 3 years. It has never, in that 3 years, been a public safety issue. Police are not called. They do not respond. And if they do, and I'm saying if they come out, they wave, and they get right on down the road. How is that a waste of time? Okay? We had one open carry incident in Seven Hill. We had an event. The police were called. We called them because of an assault on one of all members from the Brady campaign. Now, that was a waste of time and money. Not because we were there, but because we were being protested.
Thank you for your testimony. We are going to go now to witnesses in opposition. Name and organization, please.
Heather Goss, I oppose this bill strongly. We need to keep our right to bear arms.
Thank you. Next witness in opposition.
David Taylor, East Bay Tea Party. I'm in strong opposition to this bill for Second Amendment reasons.
Thank you.
And Mr. Portantino is respectfully wrong.
Next witness.
Mr. Chairman, Ed Wardio from National Rifle Association in opposition.
And Mr. Chairman, Tom Pedersen, California Rifle and Pistol Association in opposition to the bill.
Pam Pinkston, Carmichael, Citrus Heights, Fair Oaks, Tea Party activists, strongly oppose this proposed legislation.
Derek Shelley, I'm an NRA member, and we're also responsible citizens of California. Very much opposed to this. It's an infringement, and it's massively unacceptable.
My name is Dan Catania, Tea Party United. Most comprehensive studies have shown...
We're only taking name and organization. Both sides had about 4 minutes to present, so your name and your organization, please.
Dan Catania, Tea Party United.
Very good, thank you. Next witness in opposition.
Pam McDonald, Tea Party United. I'm strongly opposed.
Very good, thank you. Next witness in opposition.
Deborah Wright, I'm strongly opposed to this legislation.
Michelle Moore, strongly opposed to this legislation. I'm with the Carmichael, Citrus Heights, Fair Oaks Tea Party.
Very good. The measure's been properly moved and seconded. Mr. Wagner.
I apologize, and real briefly, a clarification, and make sure I understand, Mr. Portantino. This bill applies to the open carry of unloaded weapons, correct? I see you nodding yes.
For the record, Mr. Portantino, if you would answer that question.
So my quick question would be, and maybe it's rhetorical to the Brady people, of all of those loved ones lost that you testified to, how many of them were lost to unloaded guns?
Mr. Donnelly.
Mr. Portantino, since this is a fiscal committee, I won't harangue you with my objections, but I think that there's a strong case to be made that there are costs to live in a free society. You could make very powerful cases against people who have absolutely no right to carry a gun, who are doing it all day long. They're called criminals, and they're buying their guns out of the backs of cars. You are going after lawful, legal, law-abiding people, and I think in spite of whatever it costs to a couple of local police departments, it is far outweighed that we stand up and support and defend our fundamental rights. When something is codified as the Second Amendment, it is not something that we can just undo and infringe merely because you make a claim that it's costing a couple of police departments a couple of dollars. You know what? I think those costs are well worth it. We live in a free society here in the state of California, and we need to be expanding gun rights. I would be absolutely in favor if you would say that you don't agree with unloaded carry to where we could actually carry loaded firearms, because I think every firearm needs to be treated with respect and treated as if it is loaded, because they are dangerous. And I think it's absolutely critical that we understand that and accept that as a free society. And so I completely, absolutely, strongly oppose your bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sorry to say, when the members are done, if I could have an opportunity to respond.
In your close, Mr. Hall.
Yes, just as Mr. Wagner stated, the question is how many were lost to unloaded guns? And thus my follow-up question is, how do you protect yourself with an unloaded gun? And so I don't see, as a member of law enforcement, I know firsthand the harm and the attention that has always been given to individuals with open carry, and how it is a drain, and how it does place stress, not just on the various departments, but also individuals coming in contact with individuals with weapons, unloaded weapons. We have no idea as to whether or not that weapon is loaded or not. We can't ascertain that just by view. And in fact, it causes more harm having to deal with that issue than not. And so I just want to know, and how do you protect yourself with an unloaded weapon? If then that is the argument. How do you protect yourself with an unloaded weapon?
Mr. Portantino, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I would, and I would still like to reserve a close too. I think that you cut to the heart of the matter. The weapon may be unloaded, but whether it's the magazine or the bullets right on the same belt, they could easily be loaded and be used. And certainly that is a proliferation of unlicensed, unregulated weapons on our streets, and having the bullets or magazines in such close proximity, I think creates a threat to law enforcement and to the family on the street.
Yeah, and so I think guns and permits should be issued to people that have a reasonable level of responsibility, and that is determined by the local sheriff's department.
Mr. Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Portantino. So this is one that I really wrestled with. I do note, I was a constitutional attorney, and the Second Amendment does guarantee the people the right to keep and bear arms, and it's the and bear part that we're talking about, because keeping an arm at home is one thing and bearing it is another. It's my understanding that the frustration of the open carry movement came from the fact that there are counties in the state that don't issue too many concealed weapon permits, so people feel like they can purchase a gun, but they can't carry it concealed, they can't carry it open, so that's effectively a ban on them having that weapon. But I don't, like much else in this legislature, there seems to be sort of a rural-urban or northern-southern tension, or whatever you want to call it, because in some counties in the state, I don't think too many people would blink if you walk down the street or you walk through the farm with a sidearm on. But I do know that in Los Angeles and in places, it would be very odd to walk into a Starbucks with a gun on your thing, and that would cause probably people to call the police, and it would cause a use of law enforcement resources, and that's just the reality. So I'm supporting this bill because law enforcement is supporting this, and I want to defer to them that there have been a number of calls where they've been very, people get scared, and that's just the reality of what it is. And I just wanted to note that, I did have some concerns with this bill, and I'm hoping that there's some way to work them out, but these are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Very good. Hearing and seeing no additional comments or questions for the author, Mr. Portantino, you're close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This is a fiscal committee, but since some of the policy issues have been touched upon, I feel it's important to emphasize that this bill has been authored for two reasons. Largely because law enforcement feels their members are at risk. And second, by law enforcement members being at risk on the street unnecessarily, we're putting families at risk unnecessarily. We should not have that proliferation of these weapons on our street, as was pointed out by Mr. Hall. The bullets, the magazines are in close proximity and can easily be loaded and easily be used. This will save money because we'll cut down on the unnecessary stops on Main Street, California. We don't want a proliferation on our street of these weapons. It does not infringe on the Second Amendment. People still have the right to have firearms in their home. They have a right to get licensed. They have a right to purchase. We do have rural county exemptions for counties of smaller than 250,000 where the social mores are different than Main Street, California. And as I said many times, you do not need a weapon to buy a cheeseburger or a cup of coffee. Let's make families be able to go out on Main Street safe and secure, and their rights are just as important as the rights of the Second Amendment. And with that, I respectfully ask for
Very good, thank you. That measure is out on the B roll call. Assembly Bill 322 is a suspense candidate. Would you like to waive the presentation?
Yes.
Very good.